M. Night Shyamalan is easily one of the most inconsistent directors working today. His 2021 film, Old, ranked near the bottom of my list that year. I gave it an F. So his latest, Knock at the Cabin, has to be better, right? Let's talk about it. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review, and we're going to be pretty spoiler-free here of the new M. Night Shyamalan film, Knock at the Cabin. Of course, one of the sort of hallmarks of his movies is not necessarily even a twist ending in all cases, but just sort of that air of mystery and secrecy, and this is a thriller based on a book. So you may have read the book. It's called The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. And that title actually gives a little bit more away than M. Night Shyamalan's title, which is just Knock at the Cabin. So we won't go into really too much more detail than that. But before we dive into my review of this film, I want to welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding my video. Got a ton of great stuff on the channel here, and I would love if you would smash that subscribe button down there, or even just like the video, comment, all that stuff helps the channel out, and I do certainly appreciate it. So let's get started with this movie. So I will give a brief sort of review here up front and say that no, this movie is not as bad as Old. I've actually given several F's and D's to M. Night Shyamalan movies. Old was one of them. The Last Airbender was an F. Glass was, I think, a D. So this doesn't rank, in that category of the Shyamalan movies. But of course, it is also no Sixth Sense or Unbreakable. I don't think he's probably ever going to hit that stride again, that 1-2 punch at the beginning of his career. So this, like a lot of his other movies, falls somewhere in the middle, and we'll talk about why here momentarily. But a very, very, very brief plot synopsis is a family of 3 people, 2 gay parents and their adopted daughter are vacationing at this remote cabin, but they are greeted by 4 strangers who end up holding them hostage, and a big moral dilemma is involved here with this movie. So I think that's all we'll say plot-wise. And in terms of your stars, you've got, as the gay couple, you've got Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge, and then included in the cast of The Strangers includes Dave Bautista, Nikki Amuka Bird, Abby Quinn, and Rupert Grint, who of course is part of M. Night Shyamalan's TV show on Apple TV Plus called Servant. And you also have, as the young daughter, Kristen Cui as the young girl there. So that's really the entire cast. The only other people we see really are some news reporters. We see, of course, M. Night doing a cameo. He can't help himself. The vanity and the all wanting to be Alfred Hitchcock just compels him every time to do a horrible cameo. He can't act. It's jarring every time. So that will sort of lead us on the path of the negatives of this movie. And some of these negatives can really honestly be applied to most of M. Night's recent movies. The irritating cameo is certainly one thing, but another is he just has some poor directing choices sometimes. The first, third of this movie, there are so many just straight close-ups, very close on the person's face, and then the other person talks, and then we see a close-up of their face. And that's something I rail on a lot here on my channel, because it happens a lot more, I think, than it should in movies and TV shows. But it brings me right out of it every time. And then the other thing is, I don't know if I've noticed this particularly in some of his older work, but with this movie specifically, there's a lot of shots, and I mean like dozens, where we just sort of shift focus. Like we will go in focus, out of focus, over and over and over again. It's very irritating. So, some lazy directing choices maybe, or just poor choices. But again, that can be sort of I think applied to many of the recent output from Shyamalan. The other thing, though, is not as bad here as it was in Old and some of his other stuff. The inability, though, to grasp how people speak in normal conversation. It was very, very bad in Old. It wasn't as noticeable here, but I think still more noticeable than most other movies out there. And he did not write this one alone. This was a three-hander. He just has a co-writing credit on this. So some of that can be chalked up to maybe the other people not saying, hey, Knight, a person wouldn't really say this. That's awkwardly phrased or whatever. Again, it's not as noticeable here as in some of the other ones. And then there's just like little touches that were so annoying to notice. And maybe you won't notice them if you go, although, if you haven't seen it yet, now you will. But like, for example, there's a few scenes where they turn on the news. Well, they turn on the news at one point, and it's on a completely different news channel than it was when they turned the TV off, in the previous scene. It's just annoying. And one of them was real, BBC News, but then all of the other ones was fake. Just little things like that. I don't know what Knight's problem is, but it's just very bizarre. All right, so now we get to some of the good stuff. And there's some plot things I could take or leave that we could go into too. But again, since we're keeping this spoiler free, I'm not going to really harp on any of the plot specifics. I will say, in talking to my buddy, Ben, that I went with, he had read the book. So it was interesting to hear sort of some of the things that were changed from the book, and included in some of that is a few flashback sequences that we see in the movie that were not in the book of this gay couple on their journey, either, meeting the parents or, waiting to adopt their daughter and stuff like that were not present in the book. I kind of liked how that played out in the movie. I'm not positive that it was necessary. I'm sure the book was just fine without them. But, for character development purposes, I thought it was fine. And that brings us to, I think, probably some of the greatest strengths of this movie, which is the characters and the acting. This is a real great showcase for Dave Bautista and his acting chops. Obviously, we've known him from the Marvel universe for a while with Guardians of the Galaxy, and before that, as a wrestler. But, he's been making a lot of really interesting film choices lately, and he really, I think, is proving to himself and to us, he already probably knew it about himself, that he is as diverse as a wrestling actor we've ever seen. I like Dwayne Johnson. He's okay in some things, and he's certainly charismatic, but he seems to play the same role over and over and over again. Where Batista, I think, is really choosing some different kinds of roles, and this is a great showcase in that regard. So I like that, and also the young daughter, like I mentioned, her name is Kristen Cui. I think that's how you pronounce it, C-U-I, or Chi maybe even. But she's really, really good here too. I'm not quite sure how old she is. I think the character is 8, if I remember correctly. But the actress is, probably 9 or 10. But I thought she did a really, really good job, which is interesting because the children actors in Old were horrible. A lot of his kid actors have not been great in some of the previous Shyamalan movies. So I was happy to see that part of it as well. And then there is sort of the whole plot in general, which I kind of liked. I had a few mixed feelings about, but overall, I think it was a pretty good plot for a moral dilemma type thing. Because there's movies that have had interesting moral dilemmas, but the movie themselves have been terrible. Like The Box, for example. I gave that an F years and years ago, but that's the stranger comes in, he gives this family a box of mystery, and if they press a button, 5 people randomly around the world die, but they get $1 million. So the question is, okay, do we do it or don't we? Like, it's an age-old, kind of tale. Here, it's a little bit more complex than that for sure. But I also like the fact that Shyamalan was not too gratuitous in some of the scenes. Now, you may have a different opinion. You may say, oh, no, I wanted, more. I wanted him to really go for broke. I was okay with sort of the theater of the mind sort of thing that he presented here. So overall, look, this is a middling Shyamalan movie. I think the acting and the plot carry it a little bit further than maybe it deserves to be. I will leave Knock at the Cabin with a B-. So another slight positive for Shyamalan, sort of in the vein of The Visit or something like that. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.